Pups Milwaukee today. I'm Greg Barker, and on behalf of the rest of our organizers, which today I guess we just have Brian here today. I don't see Matt, and I think Abby said she was in Madison, and you said Camille was traveling, right?
She's over probably Montana right now.
There we go. So today we have a return visit from ItusOne Technologies. Davis and John are here to present. And theirs is a safety biometric wearable. We'll go into some more detail about it. When were you here for the last one? Was that last fall?
That would have been first week of November.
And that was right after you came out of the Commons, right?
Yeah, well, it was the week before we pitched and demoed it in Commons, so it's like really good pitch practice.
So, kind of using it as pitch practice, but it's an update because he's continued to build the team. So, welcome ItusOne Technologies.
Before we start, I'd just like to thank everyone for being here. We appreciate it. You guys offer some great insight and perspective, and you also give us the time and the people to practice in front of, so we really do appreciate it. Sorry for the technical difficulties that always seem to happen to us every time we do a pitch, but that's just kind of is what it is. Yeah. What's going on?
Loading.
Nice. Any questions before we start I can answer?
Thanks to Derek for sharing his computer.
Thank you.
I guess a question I would have, and you might get into this in your presentation, when you were presenting here last time, what, if anything, that was said or contributed changed something about the way that you went about your product?
Yeah, so one of the people we talked to here, he's a data scientist, and a lot of what he said about basically what sort of metrics we need, how we want to go about analyzing our data was really impactful on basically how we're going about this now and how we're going about our tests we haven't made. Oh man.
He's just going to say, don't.
You can do it.
The anticipation is killing us, man.
Yeah, I know. That was our plan all along.
Yeah, this is all set up.
Working. We got the old dialogue.
Oh goodness, come on.
Didn't they tell us they had a really big pipe coming in here?
You've actually been having problems.
Have they?
They have been, yeah.
Somebody must have stepped on it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're having problems with the
Awesome.
web.
Finally.
Yeah, no kidding. Again, you just click
Do I
it.
click or do I
You just click it.
click it? I don't hit the.
No.
Okay.
Right.
So we are ItusOne Technologies. ItusOne develops proprietary hardware and safety solutions in order to predict and prevent injuries in commercial construction. Now, many people ask me how I came up with this idea. It's such an abstract thing. How did I even come up with it? So I've always been fascinated with the impacts wearable technology can have on the human experience. And we live in an era with quantified self. And there's some real value to what that is. So last summer, I had an internship at an insurance company. And one of the things I noticed is that they never liked sending out checks. They always tried to figure out how to not send out the checks, but they never asked the fundamental questions. How do we prevent these injuries in the first place in order to save ourselves money? So one day, I was sitting at my desk, and I was sitting at my desk going through some boring spreadsheets when I had the nagging question of how do we predict these injuries? How do we prevent them before they happen? And then it hit me. I saw the opportunity to blend the power of wearable technology with the data analytics of insurance companies. That's our mission, and that's what keeps me going. So my name is Davis Marklin. I'm the co-founder and CEO. With me I have John Bush. He's co-founder and head of business development. Kevin Schwab is our CTO, although he was not able to make it with us today.
So the problem we're trying to solve, it starts with a construction worker named Joe. As you can see from the picture here, his job is very physically demanding. Usually it's hot outside. He's doing the same monotonous work for hours on end, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it may be. And after work, on top of that, he has the stresses of a family, which many of us here may have, the stresses of trying to put food on the table for his family, and just paying the bills in general, which is so common for all of us. And like many of us, sometimes Joe, the night before he goes to work, doesn't get much sleep. It could be because of the stresses I just spoke of. It could be just because he's sick. And he gets up and goes to work anyway because he knows he has to put food on the table for his family. He has a responsibility to his company. So he goes to work and he does his usual routine. He puts on his hard hat, puts on his vest, puts on his boots, and he goes to work. 2 hours in, he's feeling okay. It's not that hot out yet, early in the morning. Just doing the same job, but it's okay. The third hour passes, and then the fourth. Now it's hot out. Joe begins to become tired. He's showing physiological signs of distress. His heart rate becomes abnormal, his body temperature is increasing, and then he falls 2 stories. Luckily, in this scenario, Joe only broke a leg, but he could have very well died. And this has severe consequences now. First off, for Joe himself and his family. Joe and his family are now left helpless because Joe is unable to work for months on end, and he's not sure when he's going to be able to even come back to work. And there are also great costs for the construction company that employs Joe. Firstly and foremost, they have to address the emotional distress that is going to occur within the workers that they currently have. Many of these workers saw a longtime friend and coworker in Joe fall 2 stories and become injured. And in order for this company to keep their competitive advantage and maintain the baseline productivity that they had before this, they have to make sure that their workers are focused on their job. Secondly, they have to now train another worker and take the time, the energy, and the resources to do that, to make sure that this worker is going to be able to take Joe's place in his absence. And finally, they have to deal with overcoming the disadvantage they have competitively with their ability to get jobs. They're going to be seen as a liability now whenever they apply to get new work on a construction site because Joe got hurt. If this keeps happening, it's going to keep increasing costs, so it's going to decrease their competitive advantage. I'd like to now rewind the story, and I'd like to go back to when Joe arrives at work. He's still tired, he's still stressed. He puts on his boots, his goggles, and his vest. On top of that, he puts on our ItusOne wearable. Joe goes to work, same scenario, 3 to 4 hours later, becomes tired, and begins to display physiological signs of distress. Abnormal heart rate, increased body temperature. But this time, our ItusOne wearable harvests this data, and it analyzes it, and assesses it for physiological signs of distress and correlates that to a risk factor that has been sent through our software to his foreman on the job. This risk factor tells the foreman that Joe is at increased risk for getting hurt, and it gives him options. He can either A, stop Joe from working, he can B, make Joe go to the ground level floor and do something else so he can maintain efficiency but avoid him from getting hurt. And what these options give him is from the ability to now avoid Joe from getting hurt, but then to avoid all of the extra costs that occur from Joe falling and hurting himself. All because Joe used our ItusOne technology. Now, how does this happen? How does this ban avoid Joe from getting hurt? At ItusOne, we call this proactive safety. As I said before, our band harvests Joe's biometric data. It assesses it for physiological signs of distress, and it correlates those signs of distress to a risk factor that has been sent through our software to Joe's foreman, giving him options on how to properly act and react to the risk factor that Joe now presents. Our revenue. As you can see, we're going to be charging $15 per user per month for our software as a service. We're going to be charging a $100 device fee per person. This will result for $140,000 of revenue on a 500-person job site for ItusOne, and it results in $115,000 of savings for a 500-person job site for the construction company if we only save 10% of people who get hurt, just 10%. Our market is quite large. In the commercial building construction industry, it's a $160 billion a year industry. Our serviceable market, we see it as 106 million, and we define this as 20% of all the construction companies in Wisconsin and in Illinois. If it turns out that ItusOne is not the solution for the commercial construction industry, we can quite easily pivot into oil, trucking, manufacturing, and nursing. I would like to stress that our ItusOne wearable is not the same as goggles as a hard hat, as a vest. These things only limit the damage that occurs to someone when an injury happens. Our ItusOne wearable is proactive safety. It stops the injury from occurring, and it stops the costs that happen after that injury, such as the financial burden to a construction company. This proactive safety is going to revolutionize the way that we look at safety because it prevents it from even beginning. Now, how do we accomplish this goal? Some things we're asking for today are more connections to the construction and manufacturing companies because we see the necessity to further test our technology and refine it. We would like connections to insurance companies because we see great value for both the construction company and the insurance companies because we're stopping injury, so it saves both parties money. And finally, looking for computer scientists and or data scientists. This will allow us to maximize the value that we have in the data we collect. We plan on using this data to the best of our ability and to maximize the use of it and build correlations. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Why can't I use a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or some other sort of wearable that exists already and connect it with your software, or as a barrier to entry, or as to go around your software and build my own software and use it with an existing device? How are you going to stop companies from using your same idea but using it with existing devices that people already have, or you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I understand what you guys are doing, but it seems like I can take a Fitbit and hopefully build some software to do the same thing. So how do you get around that?
I'm going to let David start with this question because he's more the technology side.
Yeah, so actually, it's a really good question. So for our first test we have in May, if you see that device there, that's called a Mio Link. That device is like a Fitbit except cheaper. So yeah, we are, and other companies can, take these cheaper devices, and what we're doing is not even building our own thing right now and just using them, building our own software, because it's a lot cheaper route. So exactly, what you said was spot on.
Yeah, I mean, if your software proves out to be so great, the advantage of you connecting to existing devices will be well beyond trying to sell your device.
Right.
Just like me. So.
Right. So that's why we're using existing devices right now.
Yeah, but then in your revenue model, did you have a sell device in there?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
because they have to buy the device anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But I'm grasping what you're saying, and I do see the value in considering that sometime down the road. I do see what you're saying.
An example is that's why we have apps on phones now, right? Some of us are old enough to remember when there were no apps on phones, and you had a phone, and you had a Palm Pilot, and you had all these different separate devices. Now all that exists on one phone. It's the same. In my opinion, it's the same thing. Use an existing device, have your software be the killer app for it.
Awesome, thank you.
Let's say it goes off that, let's say that you can do everything off the Fitbit, wouldn't that be an easier sale to, because I don't know what the Fitbit costs, anybody know, the 140? So it's $40 off if you buy 500 of them, you probably get it down to the 100 level, and then it's easier to sell to the construction company because then they can sell to their employees and say, hey, besides the fact that it's going to be used for this during the day, you can also keep it and use it as for yourself. So I mean, if you could use the Fitbit to give you the information you need, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we definitely could consider that. It's one of the roadblocks we're facing is what exact metrics do we want to use in order to most effectively assess someone's physiological state. Davis can speak more to that because that's really not my area. Davis, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so Fitbit as it stands now, so just to clarify, right now we're just focused on pulse oximetry, which measures heart rate and blood oxygen level. Fitbit has that, it has accelerometers and gyroscopes, but in our eventual model, so in this pitch we talk about what our long-term goals are. In our eventual model, we're going to have all that and then a skin response sensor. So eventually, initially, using other people's hardware is the ideal, which is what we're doing now. But eventually, we're going based on hardware requirements and the existing wearable technology out there today. We are going to have to at least modify or make our own hardware. Now, right now, it's too expensive. It doesn't make any sense to do it. So that's not what we're doing now. Does that clarify your question?
So these second two things on the bottom here is actually what you have to do. I mean, you have to find something compelling that says that your solution will work. So can you get premiums lowered because they use this, or something else that in fact induces people to actually invest more than just a free download or
Right.
something else, but that you have an entire system to manage the workers on a construction site or something. You really need to get into, you know, get beyond theoretical and actually get some real conversations going with people, because that's where the money's going to come from. You know, I hate to say it, but it's only going to be from saving premiums, either or that will really drive people to do something like this, probably.
Yeah, and we absolutely agree with you. We see great value in that. We have reached out to Aon, and we actually had a meeting with their head risk consultant for the Midwest about 2 weeks ago. We have a conference call with him today, so we're working in tandem with him to see how we can work out a solution to do that. Yes.
Have you guys done a deep dive into the data that does exist either through OSHA or, you know, insurance companies of accidents that have happened, and how many, what percentage of them are actually identifiable, potentially identifiable by the biometrics that you currently have, and then which are the ones that you really need to dive into next in order to make your product, you know, even more valuable?
Dave, why don't you lead?
Yeah. Okay. So our device, when you put it on, if you picture on a mega level, when you put it on every worker on a job site, essentially what we're saying is our hypothesis, which is backed up by research. Every injury that occurs by human error can be rooted back to physiological signals. So when we focus on injuries, that would be pretty much anything caused by human error. If somebody drops a hammer on somebody else, well, that's probably because he's not in the right state of mind, or he's not thinking straight. Things like that can all be rooted back to physiological science. The things we can't prevent are by machine error. So if a piece of equipment malfunctions not due to any human error, then that's not on us. So to answer your question, we're focusing on physiological distress, which roots to any human error injury.
And to add to that, we have started digging. We've looked somewhat extensively at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They have a plethora of data of how many trips, falls, and slips there are. Like on 2014, there were 320,000 falls at construction sites in that year. So we have those numbers, and we've been looking at them just so we know, okay, like what are the most common injuries and things like that. So yes, to answer your question, we have begun to dug into those numbers and plethora of information that we are utilizing. This question, yeah.
Have you done any tests so far?
Good question, Davis.
No, we actually are in the process of getting a test set up in May. We're working with Aon, and we are hoping to get that done in May.
Yeah,
Okay,
which is,
and the follow-up to that, there was actually, I didn't want to ask the second question unless the first one was no. And that was, how long of a period are you going to need in order to gather enough data to actually make something, to know it's valuable?
Yeah, so for our first test, we have a benchmark. We're looking for a benchmark of 1,000 hours. So we can get on about 15 people, do it for about 2 weeks. That should be good there. Then we're going to want to do later this summer, probably in July or August, another 2 tests. Get us up to around 4,000 or 5,000 hours of data. From there, we'll be able to start looking at overall bigger trends, sort of baseline readings for each person, and see where the deviation is, and start being able to develop our algorithms.
and as far as the testing thing goes, we just had a meeting with the head risk consultant at JFA Hearn yesterday. He was he's very excited about what we were doing, and we very possibly will be testing with them in May.
And a couple of things. First, going back to the numbers that the other guys were talking about, you've got hard numbers that you can show for what falls and whatnot are being caused right now. Okay. A theory as to how much you guys can prevent by predicting those, as it were, okay, and stopping them ahead of time. And do you have any linkage with that back to the insurance costs right now, back to what those falls are costing the companies, both the insureds and the insurers?
We don't know the direct correlation, so when an injury happens, we don't know what portion of the money is spent by whom, if that's what you're asking. But we do know for falls, the average amount in roofing is about $107,000 at the claim cost. So that's the amount the insurance company pays out to the worker in medical and compensation expenses. Now, that's not including, you've got all the indirect costs John talked about, morale, training costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to answer your question, no, we don't know the exact breakdown of when an injury happens, who pays what, and probably different per situation. So
And then try to get some kind of idea as to, what the premium, a potential premium reduction might actually be by use of a device like this, if you're right. Also, I was going to ask whether or not you've reached out to the workers' comp community, for instance, like WMC in Madison, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce.
We have not done that. It's definitely a good idea, though.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we have not done that, but it's definitely a very good suggestion.
Okay.
Is there a privacy concern? Have you talked to unions about that data being shared?
So actually, during the Commons, we did a survey.
Yeah, potentially HIPAA as well.
I'm sorry.
And possibly HIPAA violations in people sharing their medical information.
Right, so we've actually surveyed a bunch of construction workers in the Commons last fall. We didn't, we actually haven't looked into the laws as thoroughly as we need to in the future. But we did a survey in the Commons, over 50 construction workers, and over 75% of them said they would be willing to wear something like this if it protected their safety. In terms of HIPAA violations, I'm not sure exactly how the law works, but when using this data, it'd be complete anonymity. So
yeah, there is a potential from some people's perspective, possibly that information would be used against them. So that was the reason that.
yeah, and that's why it would be anonymity. So when we talk to these companies, we give them, okay, here's how shift one is doing, right? We're not telling them who in shift one is doing badly. We're telling them, and that way, nobody gets penalized for what we.
You mean outside the company? Because inside the company, it has to be one-to-one, because that's how you prevent the injury.
Yeah. One-to-one long-term, but in the reports, we give them, this is how your shift's doing overall. Yeah.
Before you do your test, make sure you talk to the right attorney about the disclosure community in order to share the medical information. Because once they sign off, you're fine. It's just what do they have to sign off on?
Okay.
Next, quick comment. You had mentioned in the beginning of your speech that you notice that insurance companies don't like sending checks out. But one of the comments you did right after that was that they didn't focus any time on not figuring out how not to send those checks out. And that's, I'm in insurance, that's an area that I think might be taken a little abruptly by some of the people that you might be talking to. You might want to shift it from, they currently have a lot of loss prevention programs out there, but the marginal return on another hard hat or paying attention to which way the truck is going and how you enter the construction site is very minimal compared to then you build up on your product as what it can do in your proactive way through the stuff.
Thank you.
What is the range of that? How far away from what can you wear it on your wrist? How far away can it be read?
Are you asking how does it communicate?
No, he's asking like if I'm wearing this and I'm on the construction site, how far away can I be from like the trailer that our home help was in until it does not work?
Yeah, so basically we'll be using, for initial prototype, we're going to be using a meal link connected to the cell phone, so it communicates via Bluetooth from the link to cell phone and then over the cell tower. So wherever you have cell service, it should be able to work.
So you're dependent upon that.
Yes.
For the first model.
That's just your first model though?
Yes.
How do you see it in the future then?
So in the future, well, we won't have it linked to a cell phone. We have it linked to by itself, it has a SIM card and communicates via cell tower. Now, I understand there will be sites that this won't work on, in which, say for instance, in some mining situations, are not going to have access to cell service or in rural areas. We understand that's a limitation. So right now we're focused on the commercial markets where there will, in big cities, where there will be cell service and it won't be a liability.
Could it be used on truck drivers?
Yes.
Yes, that's definitely one of the areas we're looking into.
There's a team of engineering students in the product realization course at UWM that are working on this very thing for miners. And they're trying to develop the hardware the miners would wear. So it might be a thing for you to go connect with them. I think their weakest point is probably in terms of software and the analytics. So, you might benefit by hooking up with them. Whatever they develop in mind would probably work very well on the construction site.
So I had a couple of thoughts. One, you said you're going to be doing a 1,000-hour test, and then hopefully getting 4,000 or 5,000 hours. Do you have any idea of what the likelihood of getting an event in a typical 1,000 or 5,000 hours is? Because 15 people for 2 weeks, I hope there'd be no injuries on average. So are you likely to even find much out of that, or just see what your recording of the data looks like from that?
Do you want to start, or should I start?
So
So we recognize that really, especially in the commercial construction industry, with a company like JFA, or in their safety ratings, is extremely good. So the likelihood of anything bad happening is very low. So really, it's going to be a baseline of, okay, we really need to just get data to see what our benchmark is going to be. Because our first model is not necessarily going to be proactive safety. We're going to be collecting data, analyzing it, and then giving it a report to the safety assessment team so they can have insight into what's going on from a biometric standpoint within each shift. So really, it's just going to be collecting data, seeing what our benchmarks are, and then going from there. Do you have anything to add to that or change?
Another question related to that is, in your model where you had the cost versus their savings, I don't know exactly how you got to that savings number, but all I saw as a numbers guy was that it was a net out of pocket of $25,000 even after cost savings. So are there things that you're not including potentially, or are there ways to get that balance?
Yeah, so I had that exact, we were going through this last night, and I'm also numbers, like, David, that doesn't look right, like, that, it looks like they're losing 25 grand. So let me explain this, because I had the same problem, and after you explained, I was like, oh, I get it. So thank you for asking that, because I don't want anyone to be confused. The $140,000 would be the revenue that we'd be generating. If you add, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know we went through this, if you add back the $115,000 onto the 140, that's how much we're saving them. So we're taking our cut of revenue, and then the amount extra is the amount that we're actually saving them. It's not the amount that our wearable is saving them in total. It's the excess on top of our revenue that we're getting.
So then the total would be $235?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say we're saving you $235,000 and it's only going to cost you $140.
Okay, see, I love that. That's yeah.
And I think that number could be larger too, if you're looking at the number of jobs that they're going to win because they don't have work comp claims and other stuff like that. And then I also have one piece of presentation feedback.
Oh, please.
The pivot section, I know that you guys said, I would come out of the gate and say potential other target markets or expansion opportunities versus, we might fail here, but we could pivot elsewhere. Just because you planted that seed, and then that's what I thought of the rest of the time, like, oh, maybe they won't be successful in this market. So instead of just saying you could expand to other places.
Okay, so you do that more in the beginning, you said?
No, that's
No,
right
just
when
instead
that
of
slide.
saying that you're going to pivot, say these are other potential markets.
Okay, I
we
understand.
have all of these potential markets instead of, our solution might not be for construction, but it could be.
Oh, okay, I like that.
Pivot.
It makes it sound like you're not sure of your first.
It would also be too early in the presentation. You need to push it back much farther after you get more of the analytics, more of the data, some more of the things that these people talk about, helping you build into it. And then keep it short, tight. My only comment on pivot is also, my immediate reaction was, is this as much of a pivot as you think it is? Because it's not going to work with the construction industry, it's going to work with the nursing field. Because it seems to me like it's kind of just the same. If that's a market expansion opportunity, then it's not a pivot, right? So you might want to think about something like that.
Yeah.
This, in theory, could apply to almost every job, or any life sort of state, whether it could be a nurse, and whether or not she's gonna go and then mistaken what she administers to you or whatever because she's under stress.
Absolutely.
So what I think you need the sensors that are something more than you're gonna go and find on a Fitbit, something where it's actually able to go and measure, you know, cognitive conditions for you. You know, it's whether you wind up going and injecting too much into a patient, or you go and swing that shovel around and knock somebody with it because you were under a, you know, that your cognitive level is decreased. Good. Okay.
You're making an assumption that may not be true, which is that everybody, if they exhibit these things, are actually in stress. Okay? Some people can sustain, you know, cardiovascular because they're in, you know, so if you go on the treadmill, there's a red line or whatever, and some people can go way past that because of the shape they're in. So unless you know something about the individual, how do you know what you're collecting from them, what it means? You know, if you don't have a baseline for the human being, how do you put a red line and say, oh, they're in stress, because they might not be.
Yeah, that's definitely something, and I'll let you expand upon that. It's definitely something that we're going to have to overcome with the whole privacy thing. As far as just convincing workers, I don't know exactly what the law is. I have not checked into that. But as far as convincing workers, the necessity for wearing ItusOne, we're in the middle of creating a video right now. As a quick video, it's going to display to them. Here's why it's important. Here's what it does for you, and this is why you're going to want to have it on. Davis, you had anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think I talked a little bit about having a baseline reading for each worker, and as you mentioned, everyone is different. Some people are in better shape than others. So we're hoping, that as long as it doesn't violate anything, to get a baseline data for each person. So BMI, things like that, overall health, but it would be complete anonymity, as we said, on the overall reports.
I mean, I don't think you can, is what I'm saying. So you will have to do HIPAA, but they'll sign it if it's protecting them, so that's great. But if you predicted that somebody, if they hit, you know, 130 beats per minute on their heart, that they're in stress, maybe not. Maybe that, you know, it's normal for the effort they're putting in. They could do it for hours and be fine. So, you know, we're all different, unfortunately.
If I can qualify one thing really quickly. We elevated the HIPAA conversation. You had mentioned that you found, was it 75% or whatever the number you threw out of the work was actually running where it is. That's the first step. That once you get to that spot, I think that isn't necessarily a worry as long as you're an acumen that has them deciding the way everything they need to decide. Once they do that, you find that was the point before you put this, just make sure you have it. That's the tipping point on that. I don't think it's as large as
So I'd say we have time for one more question, and then anybody else?
Just one more piece of feedback from the insurance board. One of the things that the insurance people might want to know is how do you prevent abuse of this? Is there a way that workers that don't work can meddle with this? They are always concerned about people that want to take advantage of this. So you may want to be prepared to answer that question.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yeah, he had one.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to build a machine learning model to assume what you're trying to do by gathering the data in the first place without instances of accidents happening. So if your test base isn't large enough that you can get a statistically significant amount of people who fall and break a leg, for example, right? It's going to be really tough to find the trends in here because, as to what you were saying before, heart rate might increase for different reasons why. So I challenge you guys to see what isn't wearable right now, but is maybe reported in trends that you see out in the market. Like nurses notice that people at 150 beats per minute that are sweating so much amounts, they tend to have this problem. So how can you build that in from the ground up and make some assumptions from there? That way you don't have to rely on waiting for accidents to happen in the first place.
Okay, where would you recommend that we look for that information?
Data.gov is probably a good place to start. I haven't looked for healthcare information, but that might be good because Obama has released a lot of that data out there. So check that out first. Okay. Awesome.
And I was thinking that same thing on that, just to follow up. I would say that when you look for your testing, environment, whatever that's gonna be, that, I mean, it is all about the hours. So it's either gonna be by volume of people or volume of time. So look for the biggest job sites that you can get, because those are the ones where you're gonna have the most likelihood of getting enough data.
Looking for that race car to crash, right?
Exactly.
We don't like to hear that. I actually work for JFA, so I'll just let you know that. But just so you know how much we track it, on all of our phones, we have real-time data on how many accidents we have by type. That's all manually recorded. Like I can tell you that unintentional human behavior this year is 14% of our accidents. The most common injury type is strain, 32% of all accidents that and this has happened in real time because every guy in the field has this, all the foremen have it. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm not taking away anything, but thanks guys, we appreciate the information, good presentation. Quite a change from the first time you did it.
Yeah.
So keep improving and hope we hear more from you.
Well, just presentation advice, make sure you hit allow on you're in full screen mode now.
Oh, wasn't it full screen?
Yeah, see the little white bar at the top?
There we go.
There you
See,
go.
more technology issues, right? So next week, do we know who's up next week? I don't remember seeing
We
it.
do have one up. I'll know off the top of my
We'll
head.
make sure
who
we get
is.
it out to everybody.
Yes.
If anybody has any other presenters that are interested in joining us, like if you know some people at the UWM side, I have sent out posters. We made up a little poster. I've given it to most of the other operations in town that also have startups that they're working with. We're trying to get more people to come to the 1 Million Cups website and get signed up to be presenters so that we have more people in queue so that we can get people out to you a little sooner and let you know what's going on. Events coming up, I do know, let's see, there's another startup cocktail evening on the 31st, right? I think the 31st at Novo again, 6 p.m. You can find that at Startup MKE, I believe. I had them on a zip deal, but that's not working too well. Anybody else have any other upcoming events in the city as far as startup going on?
Just thanking our sponsors here.
Thanks, Jake, for coffee again, and your sons. Appreciate you doing that for us. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good day.